JavaScript gives you two different ways to determine if one value is equal to another value. And this is typically called a comparison operator. So it gives you a double equals and a triple equals comparison operator to tell whether one value is equal to another. Now, right off the bat, I want to say that this is important to understand that this is different than just a single equal sign. A single equal sign in JavaScript is an assignment operator. It will assign the value on the right-hand side to whatever variable or constant that you use on the left-hand side. So if you say const, my const is equal to some value, this single equal sign will assign this value to this constant. And then you can refer to this constant throughout your program and it will evaluate to this value here. Okay, so a single equal sign in JavaScript is just an assignment operator. Now, JavaScript gives you, like I said, two different ways to do a comparison of is this value equal to this other value? And it gives you both a double equals and a triple equals to do this. So this video is going to discuss the differences between those, which one you should use. So as you can see here, this is comparing 1 to 2, and it's just using the double equals operator. So what we would expect here is false. We would not expect 1 to equal to 2. Cool, makes sense. Looks like double equals works just fine. Now, triple equals, as you can see here, does the very same thing. So if I run this and if I save it, we will see that we get false and false. Both of these evaluate 1 is equal to 2 to false. Makes total sense, but there are some kind of catches here, especially with using the double equals. So for the double equals in JavaScript, it will first convert the types that you are comparing, and then it will make the comparison. So if the types are the same, it will perform exactly the same as the triple equals. So if you compare two numbers, two strings, it's going to do the same thing, okay? So if the types are the same, it's not going to matter. But where it gets a little bit hairy is that it will convert types. So if it's a non-primitive value, which you can check out my video on data types to learn all about that, but if it is a non-primitive value, it will first convert it to a primitive type, and then it will make the comparison when using double equals. So as you can see, if I console.log an array containing 24 and then I call toString on it, you'll see the output of that is just 24. So if I console log an array containing 24, and if I ask, okay, is that double equals? Is that equal to just the number 24? You'll see the output of that is actually true. Because when you call toString on an array, you're actually going to get 24. And then when JavaScript compares 24 to 24 with double equals, it's going to give you true. And of course, in our programs, are we ever going to want to think that an array with 24 is equal to the value of 24? Probably not, right? So this is one example of how double equals isn't always going to give us what we want. So another consideration is when we try to use double equals on an object. Well, it's first going to try to convert that object to a primitive value. So in this case, it's going to try to convert it to a string. So right here, this double curly braces here is me declaring an object, a new object instance here, and then I'm calling toString on this object. And an interesting little quirk of JavaScript here is that what this evaluates to when you call toString on an object, and you can kind of change this by manipulating the toString property on objects, but we can potentially talk about that when I go into objects in more in depth. But when you call toString on just this generic empty object here, you can see that the output of this is square bracket, object, object, square bracket. So if I counsel log, is an object instance equal to square bracket, object, object, square bracket? What we're actually going to get here is true, which, this doesn't quite seem right, okay? So the big takeaway with double equals is it first will convert the types. If it is a non-primitive value, it will try to convert it to a primitive value and then make the comparison, which, as you can see in these examples, it can lead to potentially just some things that we don't want. So that brings in triple equals. So triple equals here, it will not convert types. If the types are not equal, triple equals automatically returns false. It's like, hey, these are not the same data types. They cannot be equal. This is, you might also hear this called kind of strict equality. But, if I was interviewing someone and I asked them the difference between double and triple equals and all they said was double is loose equality and triple equals is strict equality, I would want them to elaborate on that. What does strict equality mean, though? What does loose equality mean? And the fundamental difference here is the conversion of types before the comparison, okay? So as we've already seen here, if we compare 1 triple equals 2, we're going to get exactly what we want. It does not convert the types. And let me use one of my examples from earlier. So if I counsel log, the array of 24 is equal to the number 24 and triple equals that. And let me get rid of this top line here. So if I run that, you're going to see false. Okay, good. That is what we would expect. It doesn't try to convert this. It says, oh, this is actually an array. This doesn't have the same data type as a number here. So we are going to automatically return false. It does not convert the types. Okay? So like I said, when types are the same, double and triple equals do the exact same thing. But when they are different, that is when we can get some of these potentially not great comparisons that could lead to bugs in our program, okay? So another example of this here is if we try to do the string 1 double equals 1. So in your head here, think about what you think is going to happen here based on what I just told you. If we do the string 1 is double equals to the number 1. As you can see, when using double equals, that will log out true because it will first convert that string 1 to the number 1, and then it will make the comparison. And 1 is equal to 1. But if we look at the triple equals version, what will it do here? It will first be like, okay, these have different data types. One's a string, one's a number. And if that's true, okay, we can just return false. At least triple equals will do that. So running this, we see it does indeed log out false. Okay, so that is, very likely what we want here. All right, and now if we look at another example, we can look at null and undefined. So if I compare null is equal to undefined, we actually get true. Null equals undefined turns out to be true, which, sometimes this might actually not be a terrible thing. Like in your programs, if you get that something is equal to null or undefined, you might want to do the same thing. So every once in a while, this might be okay, but JavaScript actually gives you another operator to tell if something is null or undefined, and that is the double question mark operator. I'm not going to go over that one here in this lesson, but we'll touch on those operators in more depth in the future. But there's other ways to do this without using double equals. So this potentially isn't like a really good use case to use double equals, okay? Even if we wanted to check if something is null or undefined. But then we see with triple equals here, null, triple equals, undefined, we get false. And I already showed you the example of the arrays of 24 and the number 24, so we don't need to do that here again. But here, this is a little bit of an interesting one. So when I compare true double equals to an array and false double equals to an array, we get an interesting outcome of the true double equals an array evaluates to false, and a false double equals array evaluates to true. Probably not something that we want to deal with too much in our programs, okay? And then if I do false triple equals an array, so last time with double equals, this turned out to be true, but with triple equals, we see that that is indeed false, which is very much what we want. And then if we look at kind of a final example here, if we do 0 double equals a empty string compared to 0 triple equals an empty string, we get true for double equals, 0 double equals an empty string, and then 0 triple equals an empty string evaluates to false. So as you can see in these examples here, double equals likely doesn't give us what we want quite often. Like 0 double equals an empty string, I can hardly ever think of a case in which we would want that to evaluate to true within a program. So there are quite a bit of corner cases and edge cases with double equals to where it just gives us kind of a confusing evaluation. So with this, what should you use? Well, I think it has kind of become clear with these examples that triple equals very likely gives us more frequently what we would expect and what we want. Now, I have heard the argument that you should understand your code enough and how JavaScript works enough to just use to where you can use double equals. Like when the types match, then double equals and triple equals do the same thing. And that argument is understandable to some degree, but I see very little risk to using just triple equals all the time. Whereas if you start using double equals quite a bit and you just accidentally use that in a case to where you hit a corner case and you forget that, oh, these types aren't equal, well, yes, you could argue that you should understand the types in your program, which you should, but it does add a little bit of mental overhead here to constantly think about, oh, wait, am I accidentally going to hit a corner case here to where triple equals is just going to give me more of what I expect? Yeah, so I think that there's just a little downside to using triple equals all the time. And if you really want to understand the types in your program, you can use TypeScript or something like that to make sure that you have to enforce those types. So I think that I would just all the time use triple equals. I would say that it's still good to understand the differences, but triple equals is likely going to give you what you expect most of the time. So in summary here, the difference between double equals and triple equals is that double equals is going to first convert the types before making the comparison. And if you're trying to compare a non-primitive value, so like an object or an array, it's first going to try to convert that to a primitive value. But then with triple equals, it is not going to convert the types. If the data types are different, it's just going to return false right away because it's like, hey, the types are different. I don't even need to make the comparison. I can just return false. All right. And throughout your program, I recommend just using triple equals. I think there's very little downside to doing that. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in that next one.